The Cannabis Conversation. A European perspective on the emerging legal cannabis industry.
Welcome to the Cannabis Conversation with Anush Desai, where we explore the new legal cannabis industry by speaking to the professionals that are helping to shape it. Hope you all had a good week. We had a bit more positive news this week. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, announced that he wants to explore decriminalising cannabis if he wins the upcoming elections in May. Just a campaign pledge, but very interesting. He can't change the law on his own. He needs government approval. But it's a positive sign that he's willing to sort of put it out there as a campaign pledge. Shows that it's an important issue that needs discussing. The cold reality is that very next day, our lovely Prime Minister showed full ignorance on the issue by saying he has absolutely no intention of legalising cannabis, which is a harmful substance. So that kind of shows you how much work there is still to do. Anyway. Got another interesting episode coming up now, talking about the experiences of IPOing a cannabis company. Enjoy. On today's show, I have Dr. Jason Mitchell. Jason is CEO and co-founder of Hemp Fusion, a Canadian health and wellness CBD company who have recently IPO'd. So we'll be hearing more from Jason about that. Welcome, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. Thanks for having me.
No, real pleasure. I'm quite interested and excited about this show because we're going to talk about the IPO process, which people talk about a lot in this space, but I'm not sure they fully understand all of the hurdles you have to jump through and the hoops you have to jump through. So we'll get on to talk about that in a bit, but maybe to start with yourself and a bit of an intro. If you could tell us a bit about your background, what you were doing before, how and why you decided to get into cannabis.
Absolutely. So first of all, I am a board certified naturopathic doctor, but if I were to take a little bit step back, initially professionally, it'll help you understand how I landed here as the co-founder of Hemp Fusion. So for me, my family's been in the natural products industry for quite some time. My mother was the assistant to the founder of GNC back in the 70s. She had her own chain of health food stores that she sold out in 96. And I started my first professional job in the natural products industry with a company called Country Life Vitamins. I was there for about 15 years. And by the time I left in 2013, I was their chief science officer. I had designed over 300 of their products. I'm very passionate about that company. I love them. They're an amazing company. They offer really great products. And I actually helped through the process, take that company through an acquisition in 2006 by Kikkoman Foods, a multi-billion-dollar multinational company. So me and one other colleague, as well as the CFO, were able to build that company from a very modest-sized company to a very handsome-sized company to then be acquired. And it was a lot of work. And there's a lot of work in building a company that's already existing. It's even more difficult to start one from scratch. That means you have to bring your concepts and realization to the masses quickly in order to gain market share and things of that nature for people to understand. But in 2011, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called ulcerative colitis. It is an immunological, inflammatory bowel disease that has amazingly awful side effects. And the pathology of that disease is very painful. It's very troubling. I want to be very clear. Hemp Fusion and our other company that we own, that's a wholly owned subsidiary of Hemp Fusion, is Probulin Probiotics, did not cure me. I want to be very clear, not to misrepresent in any way, shape, or form. It did not cure me. In fact, it was the disease itself and the suffering that I went through with that disease that inspired me to do what I'm doing today. And I believe in a concept that I like to call conscious capitalism. And it means that, yes, I want to build a business that's successful, both financially and physically and financially successful. But I want to do so with the mindset that the ultimate goal is why. Why am I doing it? I'm doing it so that others can actually gain a little better control of helping to support their body to stay well. That's a very, very big driving force to me. Because I think that if you do what's right, it won't always happen right away, but it absolutely will do good for a great number of people. And so that's our goal. But interestingly enough, when I went through this problem, I was completely anti-cannabis. Like if there were two people that had opposite political views and would fight to the death to defend their view, that's how adamant I was against cannabis. And it was because when I was in naturopathic medical school, they did not teach the endocannabinoid system, because it was a relatively new discovery. Only in 1992 did they even discover it, let alone has it even entered the medical school community yet to be taught. I think it's in small ways being done now, but when I was going through, mine was in the 2007 when I graduated. So for me, it's like, there was no endocannabinoid system teaching at all. What was interesting is that going through my own disease and my own challenge, I got exposed to a terpene called beta-caryophyllene, not CBD. It's a terpene commonly found in clove and black pepper, and it's also in hemp or cannabis and so forth. And then it led me to the discovery of the endocannabinoid system, which inspired me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was wrong. I was completely wrong. And so the mission that I went on was a mission of apologetics to say, I am sorry for being so ignorant, and I'm going to do something about it by building a company that has beautiful products to help people understand that not only is this a real thing, but that it's actually really important, and that your body has this system in it that needs to be supported like any of the other systems. And so it was really kind of an interesting thing. But in 2013, I started the company Probulin. And Probulin is a probiotic company. Right now, if we were to fast forward to today, it's an industry-leading probiotic company in the natural products industry. According to Spin syndicated data, it's the fastest growing probiotic brand in the top 15. So we're doing quite well on the probiotic side. It was in 2015 that me and my co-founding partners, Ian Dekeroyce, Andrew Oliver, and Ryan Griffith, came together and decided that we wanted to do this together and build a company. And we find ourselves here today. So that's kind of the background and the genesis. So not your natural, organic way of coming to a business idea, but I think it's, in the words of Simon Sinek, it's all about the why. There has to be a why that's so great that no matter what obstacle in your way, you're still willing to fight through it. Like I joke with people and I say, if patience was a currency, I'd be a billionaire. So
I like that. Yeah, I mean, but maybe not that organic as you say, but very personal. And you were inspired to make a change based on your own personal circumstances. I was very interested in the thing that you said that, you were quite anti-cannabis before. How did you combat that sort of stigma, and how did you overcome that in your head? And was it just personal, or were you also surrounded by people who also stay away from this type of thing?
Well, so I'll tell a really interesting story that has some really interesting names that I'll provide to you. Is that in Arizona, where I lived next door to Dr. and Mrs. Davis, who were the parents of Nancy Reagan. And so Nancy Reagan, while Ronald Reagan was president, used to visit her mother quite often after her father had passed. She was there quite often. I don't know exactly how often, but I was in 6th grade. And so I had breakfast with her on the patio and had interactions because we were neighbors. And she was very much part of that say no to drugs and the anti-drug movement. And the 80s were very big on the war on drugs. And so it was ingrained in my head generationally that marijuana was the devil's weed, and it was the, gateway drug. It was what led to all these other problems. And so it was very hard growing up in a time like that, being programmed and then going through an illness, discovering how wrong that programming was, and that this plant was improperly villainized for so many different reasons. And coming to that realization was a difficult one, I have to admit. I even had to fight back my tendency to say, okay, well, I'll agree with all the cannabinoids except Delta-9. Like THC, not willing to accept it because that gets you high and there's just no benefits there. If I fast forward to today, we started the company in 2015, actually almost 2016. It was November of 2015 when we founded the company. In 2016 and beyond, I had this slow evolution of thinking going, THC is not so bad. Now, granted, hemp fusion has nothing to do with THC. We have absolutely no, in fact, our products boast that they are tested below 0.01% Delta-9 THC, which in most labs is considered non-detectable. So by that virtue, that's not at all the business we're in. But I'm not against THC anymore because I believe that there are proof of medicinal. So it was really just an interesting educational thing. And I think that that's what our culture is going through right now with CBD. 2-3 years ago, people weren't sure if you could get high on CBD. And today you have a third of the American population using a CBD product. So I think it's just an evolution of education and really trying to inspire different ways of thinking of people that are stuck in the past as well.
Yeah. I think it's really honest of you to sort of say how your journey of kind of reevaluating it, and that THC remained a sticking point for a while, but you eventually changed that. So that's really, it's nice to hear that. And obviously, having Nancy Reagan living next door, visiting next door, she was a key proponent of that just say no kind of campaign, which
sure
caused lots of issues. But we won't dwell on that. On to hemp fusion. Why don't we talk a bit about that? Why don't you give us a broad overview of what you guys do and, what kind of products you have, that sort of stuff?
Absolutely. So if you were to look at the company just from 1,000-foot view, Hemp Fusion is a US wellness company, Hemp Fusion Inc., and it has a wholly owned subsidiary called Probulin Probiotics. Now, to give the evolution of that, in 2013, Probulin Probiotics was formed. I founded that company then. We grew the company for a couple of years. And then I met my founding partners in late 2015. We formed Hemp Fusion. And if we fast forward to 2019, an investment group, Rad Capital, came in and decided that we were a good investment for them. And so they worked very hard to raise capital for us to be able to grow. And in the summer of 2019, we brought the two companies together. Now, our products, our family of brands, our products are actually available in over 4,000 retail locations. And it's an exciting company that has 46 products that all have unique structure, function, attitude towards how we address messaging to the consumer. Because if you look at the data in around hemp and CBD, the three primary reasons why people use products are for pain, stress, and sleep. And this is according to data, not just my opinion. And when you look at this, how do we actually make it clear messaging for all of them? So on the pain side, we have OTC drug listed products, meaning they are listed on the FDA drug registry as over-the-counter drugs. We have 8 products. 5 of them are located, or I should say focused on the area of pain relief, things like backaches and aches and pains and sore joints and arthritis and so on. And we have 5 products designated for that specific purpose. And then we also have ingestible products like our Hemp Fusion Stress to deal with those occasions of stress. And our Hemp Fusion Sleep, which is designed very specifically to help give people relaxation so that healthy sleep is achievable potentially, but without the use of drugs or over-the-counter meds and things of that nature. So we try to just do what's right to support the body. So we have a very interesting dynamic product line. Now, our Probulin line is kind of interesting because there are still retail locations that are very interested in probiotics, but have not yet made that leap into carrying CBD products and so on. So while Probulin is a successful brand in itself, the uniqueness of us having these two companies and being diversified is that on companies and retailers that are not willing to do CBD products now, they partner us with us on the Probulin side and we stay in the conversation. So it's sort of our Trojan horse, if you will, in certain circumstances. And so it allows us to have a very relevant, effective product line to be marketed to retailers and give support to the consumers while still being in the discussions as to when those times change. And so that strategy has proved to be working very well for us.
Yeah. I mean, probiotics is fascinating. Gut health is a big topic that lots of people are taking very seriously. So I can imagine that it's a kind of successful vertical for you. Are you guys at the moment looking at combining CBD with probiotics and that kind of area?
In our first product launch, one of our first products was called Hemp Fusion Digestive. And it was actually taking the technology that I had with Probulin and probiotics and combining it with hemp-derived CBD and other compounds like clove and black pepper terpenes and things of that nature. We believe that might have just been a bit too early. And so we launched it in the very beginning. We have since discontinued the item, but we have an interesting approach coming soon. We already own the URL Cannabiome. And so understand that we're working on some things in development. We have over 30 products in development right now. And so it's pretty exciting where we're heading. And so I look forward to those days in the future for sure. So
brilliant. Yeah. I mean, I think it would be a great combination. So I look forward to seeing that when it comes out. But you also brought out something kind of interesting there as well. Like I always like to ask entrepreneurs about the sort of mistakes or pivots that you've had to make. So, for example, the one you just mentioned, are there any other sort of big things that you found you tested out, didn't quite work, but you learned loads from that kind of experience?
Absolutely. So early on in the phase of launching products that contain CBD, one of our biggest questions were, is it legal? We wanted to make sure that, I believe in a concept that in my team, I ingrain this into them. We always do it right, and it may not always be right away. And why that's so crucial and important is that if you do it right, even though the others may gain a little bit of an advantage on you in the short run, in the long run, you end up having a business that people can trust. And the largest retailers, the largest organizations, the the largest business platforms will have a greater sense of trust in you if you have a clean record throughout your corporate history. If you get one warning letter from the FDA, that's kind of like a tattoo that lives on your forehead, letting everybody know that you screwed up. So early on in our in the business, we actually didn't put CBD on the label. We simply labeled everything hemp extract, and there wasn't enough knowledge about hemp extract and what it contained. And there was even less knowledge about CBD and why it was important, because legally you couldn't say very much. And so certain companies were making very outlandish claims that were totally illegal, and then others were being very caged about saying anything. And I think the lesson to learn there is that we didn't label CBD soon enough. And I think that we should have labeled CBD sooner. However, all those lessons have led us to a place in 2021, which now we are calling and referring to as CBD 2.0. This is where the CBD industry hits puberty, right? We're starting to grow a mustache, right? We're realizing the errors of our ways. We are also realizing that the pending guidelines coming from the FDA are only months away now, because there are, in Congress right now, they have a bill that is going to compel the FDA to reveal their guidance. And I sit on the Legal and Science Committee for the US Hemp Roundtable. My chief marketing officer, Ola Lassard, is the first female president of the US Hemp Roundtable, and she's the first two-term president of the US Hemp Roundtable. So it's quite an amazing individual. And so we have a very interesting vantage point to see what the rules are coming. And so when I see what's coming, the FDA is not coming at it from a lackadaisical, don't worry about it, just sell CBD. There's going to be some very strong regulations. But interestingly enough, they're not new regulations. They're the regulations that have been required for dietary supplements forever. They're just going to say, hey, listen, we've discussed it. We've heard you. The same rules apply. If you cannot play with these rules, then you cannot play. And I would argue that there's less than a dozen companies that will be able to comply with these regulations. And we happen to be one of them. We have prepared what we believe to be the strongest regulatory portfolio that you could possibly put together. It took millions of dollars to do that. It took a lot of time. Again, if patience was a currency, I'd be a billionaire. And maybe someday that'll come true. But the reality is that we are consciously aware of the rules, consciously aware of the necessity for companies like us to prove safety, that the consumer needs to trust us, that we are doing what's right by them. Not only does the product work, but is it okay for them to take? Is it safe for them to take? We've already done all the safety assessments. And then if I were to go to jump across the pond to where you're at, we're also corresponding with the UK guidelines of where they said by March 31st, you have to submit a novel food ingredient submission. We are not submitting an incomplete package just to hold our place in line, because they've already warned that if you do that, you'll be disqualified. We will have a complete novel food dossier submitted by the end of March, so that we are responsible to our international friends and partners, because we want to be good partners there. But I won't launch a product until I am compliant. And I know that seems silly, but I'm not in the UK right now. But I will be, but only when I'm compliant. We just entered Ireland, and we did it with the full acknowledgement of the Food Safety Authority of Ireland, along with full EU compliant labels. Once I file my novel food, we will be making the jump into UK, because we want to treat every government with our utmost responsibility and respect to what they require.
Yeah, I was going to bring up novel foods, and so it's great that you did as well. I mean, yeah, it's a major, not issue, but it's a challenge for a lot of businesses, because there's a lot of data that you need to put together, and so everyone's sort of scrambling to get that together. But it's good that we've already completed all the data. Now it's just assembling and getting it submitted. So the data's done on our part. We've already done all the tox work, the human observational, micronucleus testing, all the things that are required are already completed. So, which is a good thing. Yeah, great. Just before we go on to sort of the IPO experience that you had. What are the sort of international markets you're operating? You just mentioned Ireland. You're looking at the UK. What about other markets at all?
So currently, Probulin Probiotics is the most abundantly international outside of the US right now. Currently, Probulin is offered as products not only in Ireland, but in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. And we are a very prominent brand there now, have been there for several years. We're in South Korea. We're in Mexico. And we have multiple other international destinations that are coming soon, because those take time, right? Like you have to plan them out. And as listed in our prospectus, we show exactly some of the countries that we're targeting and so forth. So we're very quite open about it, because these countries require regulations, right? And that we go through all of the proper process. So yeah.
Yeah. It's not an easy decision. So it's
Definitely
good that you're being thorough. Yeah. Let's move on to the main topic then, which is the IPO process. So people talk about listing a lot in the cannabis space, and obviously in Canada there was a real rush to do that a few years back, and probably still ongoing. But maybe it'd be useful because you guys just listed at the beginning of January, I think it was.
January 6th, yes.
Yeah, maybe you could just take us a bit through the process. I think there's obviously a lot of detail, so maybe keep it high level, but is it a totally stress-free, lovely experience?
Well, to be completely honest, it's the first time that I've ever myself professionally taken a company through an IPO. And so I have to first say that it's an absolute honor to have been approved by the TSX, being that they are the leading exchange globally when it comes to stocks related to cannabis and CBD and so forth. And we are the first US company to directly list on the TSX that sells products that are CBD. And we've had a successful go since the IPO as it relates to our share price and so forth. And so we feel very encouraged, and it's really quite awesome. Now, to say that the process is without stress would be a bit of a misleading statement. It is definitely not without its stresses. I think what it taught me, though, is that I have a very deep understanding on regulatory compliance as it relates to FDA rules and stuff about dietary supplements, the marketing and sale of supplements, and so on. The challenge, though, is when you deal with a whole other regulatory environment. In fact, I jokingly say I'm a doctor that thinks like a lawyer. When I started to go through this process, the auditing and the financial, you have to go through such a financial deep dive that literally they know every single penny where everything is. And it's a very arduous task. And so you're answering questions over and over again. And the audit process takes forever, it seems. And then you get through every single word that you are writing or saying is being scrutinized. And so it is a painful process. I have to tell you, but I do believe that it's worth it. I do believe that if it makes sense for your business, from a capital fundraising perspective, it can be an excellent tool. It also exposes you to a very large audience of people that previously may never have known who you are or been exposed to your brand. And so by that purpose, you improve your SEO, right? So you get exposure in a different way. So there's literally a global community that now has exposure to Hemp Fusion, which is really special. And it's not just the money, because the money is part of it. There's no question. But being able to raise the money in that mechanism, it actually holds you accountable. And I have no problem being held accountable. I think that's very important, because now you're accountable not just to yourself and your employees, but also your shareholders. And so I kind of like that in some respects. It is a little bit stressful. I had to get out of the habit of checking the ticker every single day. Like I'm like 20, 30 times a day. My team said, Jason, stop doing that. There will be no explanation why things go up or down. It just is what it is. But the one thing that probably is the most stressful for me is that when all this is said and done, all the work that we go through to do this, yes, it's worth it. Yes, it's an honor to be a part of the TSX, but it's the heavy is the head that wears the crown cliche statement. One of our board of directors said, Jason, now all you have to do is perform. And I said, oh, is that all? And so, we're in the middle of, a pandemic globally, and there's challenges from all different aspects of corporate reality on how you market and reach consumers. And thankfully, over the last year, we took a serious look internally to say, how are we going to design this business to not only be successful in the eyes of what we're dealing with today, but as things change and evolve in industry, you still have to reach consumers, whether bricks and mortar is a possibility, or if that changes, or the ebbs and flows from online purchasing and so on. We became far more sophisticated in the way we looked at it, and the way that we developed our annual operating plan, which is a 5-channel strategy plus international. We believe we have the right team assembled with the right culture, with the right products, with the right plan. And so we're just excited that going public affords us the opportunity to hit that runway.
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation. And the accountability is a good angle too. What are some of the reasons that you decided to go that route? I mean, the money, access to a wider pool of money must be the obvious one, but are there any other reasons? Because that must be a bit of a double-edged sword as well. If you don't perform, you can easily, suffer at the hands of the retail investor as well.
Well, I think, while I have in my heart and my team this ideology of conscious capitalism, right? And that we're doing right by the consumers, and things don't always happen right away. That's the one challenging factor, is that doing it right and not always right away, we hope our our investors and everybody understand that we're, the long game is really what CBD is all about. It's not this short little football game. It's not. It's a much longer game, because this is not a gimmick. This isn't a trend. This is actually something that will be here for decades, and we'll be building a multi-billion-dollar channel. There's no question about it. But one of the reasons is going public. Yes, it helps you raise capital so that it can actually afford you the opportunity to move forward. And I would say that's a really important mission, because unfortunately, cash is king to some degree. You have to be able to afford to do what you need to do in order to be successful. And so we sit as one of the most well-capitalized US CBD companies in the industry right now, which allows us the ability to be structurally nimble and effective and be able to afford the mission necessary. For example, currently our digital online purchases only represent about 6% of our sales. But if you look at industry standard, about 50% of CBD purchases are purchased online. And there are some estimates that probiotics, about a third of the purchases are online. So we have such a huge opportunity digitally. And so one of our largest investments is in our expansion as it relates to our digital footprint.
Yeah. Well, I mean, investment is designed to get you there quicker, right? But I guess it also affords you a bit of an ability to play around with things, with the comfort of knowing that you've got some cash to sort of see you through times where it doesn't quite work out. So I totally get that.
Well, to that point, though, I'll share something with you. Online, because of the current lack of clarity from the FDA, online marketing is rather challenged as well. You can't use the normal tactics like Google or Facebook and things that you would traditionally be able to do. In fact, you have to use a lot of alternative tactics that require a great deal more capital to be able to access correctly to build momentum. You can't use the normal tactics. And we as a company do everything above bar and correct. So we don't resort to those black hat tactics that some companies also use as well. We just don't do it. And so as a result, we have to take the high road and do things correctly. And that is, online marketing is very expensive. Now, what we did, though, is we assembled probably the most effective digital marketing team that has direct experience in understanding how to market CBD online, because it is very challenging. And what's beautiful about this is that even the largest of companies in CBD right now only have about 2% market share. So nobody's actually won the Coke or Pepsi kind of crown yet. You know what I mean? I hate to say those names, but those are very big, agribusiness names that, they're winners in their category. There isn't a winner in CBD category yet. There are only temporary leaders, and temporary leaders are just an estimation of what their dollar volume is. But I can tell you that dollar volume can change in an instant if things happen correctly. And we believe we have the right plan.
Yeah. Exciting times. So not to get bogged down in the detail, but what are some of the things that you need to do that you had to go through to get ready for an IPO? And how long did that process take? Is it like 6 months or a year, or is it a bit more?
Well, from an audit perspective, you have to go through 3 years of audited financials. There's all kinds of different things of that nature. And so by that virtue alone, that process, it took us the better part of a year to be able to go through to take all the necessary steps. And that's only if we had previously done all the necessary auditing and had audited financials of which were credible, right? And so that's a really important process. But yeah, it took a better part of about a year. There were several steps. To sit and name them all, we'd get buried in detail, but there are several steps. And what I would recommend to anybody listening that wants to go through this process, make sure that you have an experienced team that understands the public markets, because it will shrink the time and it will reduce the number of mistakes that are potentially made. Having a very, very, very solid understanding. And then once you go public is when the work begins. And making sure that you have a strong investment or investor relations team that can help guide through these waters and make sure that we message correctly. One of the biggest lessons I had to learn about this particular space is that I would love to share with you some exciting things I'm working on, but I can't share that with you any longer. I have to be very caged about what I talk about as it relates to in the future. Only things that we've previously disclosed in our prospectus, as well as things that we reveal in our quarterly reports and so forth, can I even share. Otherwise, I'm not allowed to tell you what I'm working on or give future guidance. All I can tell you is that we believe we have a solid plan. We have the capital to do it, and we have the right team with the right products, priced correctly with the right messaging, that I think we're ready.
And I assume the reason that you can't talk about it is that may influence the share price.
Well, it may influence the share price, but it also may influence individuals to invest when, what if I don't hit the goals that I suggest are there, And that's irresponsible. And for me, I never want to be the person responsible for someone losing. I don't want to do that. I want to do whatever's best for our shareholders because I believe that is financial health. But then I also want to do what's best for our consumers, which hopefully our shareholders are also consumers of our products, that it is for physical health, and that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's a process of, because you're opening up to the public, you basically need to be honest and they need to understand what they're buying into, warts and all. So what you produce and that level of compliance, so that you're basically giving them the information they need to make an informed decision. An informed decision, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. You know how easy, it's so much easier to just be honest. It strikes me as so odd whenever I see stories about people that have falsely, fraudulently said things that were not correct. It's so much easier just to be honest. And for us, we come by it quite honestly because our team is an amazing team. And we work very, very hard to hit goals and so forth.
Brilliant. And then cool. So I guess we'll round it off with how's it been since... So it's been about a month, must be, I expect.
Yeah, it's been, we're just rounding the 1 month corner. And I will tell you that the stock has been performing, which I feel very good about. I mean, we IPO'd at $1 per share, and we are now currently sitting at $2.44. And I just literally checked it right then and there live to make sure that we're, just to make sure that I wasn't being inaccurate. But currently right now at this very instant, the stock price was at $2.44. So we feel very encouraged by where it's heading. And that means that people have faith in us, which is really good. And we hope to deliver. That's our goal.
Fantastic. Great. And thank you for sharing your story. It's really, and it's good to hear that you stopped looking at it 30 times a day. I can imagine that would be really tempting to just do that all the time.
Yeah, well, it's a little obsessive, really. You get obsessed about it. And I had my IR team, Danny Brody, told me, he goes, stop looking at it. I'm going to literally install some sort of virus on your computer that doesn't allow you to access the TMX. And I'm like, all right. So anyway, and here's the deal. I take a lot of pride in what we do every day. The last thing that I ever want to do is fail my team, and certainly not our shareholders. And so our everyday intent is to actually deliver. And it's a very, very hard business to build given the current climate when you have COVID, FDA and insecurity, global insecurity as it relates to laws and so forth. But we have planned for this many years ago, not the COVID side of it, but the regulatory side of it. And so I do not believe there is another company in CBD that is more prepared than we are.
That is a brilliant way to round it off. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jason. I really appreciate you sharing that story. And it'd be great to have you on again at some point in the future to sort of check up on how you guys are getting on.
I look forward to it. Any day, anytime.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jason.
My pleasure. Thank you.